There's a reason that the subtitle of my book was Reversing the Ruin of America's Worst Run State. That's the subtitle of Califalia. And that is because it is the worst run state, because California is failing on every single measure that matters.
He is a bold voice for America First, a fierce critic of globalism, and now a candidate for governor of California. But before stepping into U.S. politics, Steve Hilton advised prime ministers and took on deep state elites. He's author of a great new book called Califalia, Reversing the Ruin of America's Worst Run State. And as war erupts in the Middle East, we're joined now by Steve to unpack what this conflict means not only for Israel and Iran, but for America. Steve, you're in the car right now. You're campaigning across the Golden State. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But up first, look, the big story now, there's a campaign unfolding in the Middle East right now. Israel striking Iran's nuclear facilities, its ballistic missile arsenal. Steve, what's your take so far? We've seen major losses suffered by the Iranian regime, and perhaps President Trump orders the United States to get involved, maybe bomb that Fordo military site. A lot happening right now in the world's most volatile region. How do you see it?
Well, it's unfolding right in front of our eyes, changing every hour. So who knows where events will take us? But I think there's a few things we know for sure. Number one, we know for sure that Israel was attacked. This war was not started by Israel. This war was started by Iran, by its proxies, Hamas, who carried out the most vicious and appalling massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And that's what has started this latest round of conflict. And Israel is a democracy that wants to live in peace with its neighbors. That's a fact. And it's the neighbors who are on the other side of that moral position. Another fact, President Trump wants two things. He's made that very, very clear. He wants peace, not just here in the sense of this conflict in the Middle East, but generally. That's been his position for as long as he's been involved in politics. He wants to end the forever wars. He led that process in relation to Afghanistan, and his view is that he should use the power of the United States to push for peace around the world. That is very clearly his goal. Everything he says and does supports that. Secondly, in relation to President Trump, he's made it also very clear that peace requires that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. You cannot have a nuclear weapon in the hands of a murderous, theocratic, authoritarian regime that is prepared to kill without limit. And those things, I think, point in one direction, which is that at this moment, with all of this tension in the world, I can't think of anyone, actually, who I would rather have in the Oval Office making decisions than President Trump. Because above all, we've seen with President Trump, he is a pragmatist. He's pragmatic. He's not an ideologue. He wants to solve problems in a clear and business-like fashion. He's used to negotiating. You see that happening right in front of our eyes. I believe everything he is doing right now is designed, in his view, to try and get this thing resolved without military conflict. We'll see what happens, but those are the things that seem very clear to me.
Steve, great breakdown all around. And I think the importance of leadership is very clear here. Number one, peace through strength. Number two, President Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, two, I guess you could say, Churchillian type modern figures. But I think, Steve, it shows us the importance of strong, resolute leadership, which we've been lacking in California. The latest example, the LA riots and the madness unfolding over the past few weeks. Gavin Newsom is running the beautiful Golden State into the ground, and that's why you're running as a Republican candidate for governor of California. Tell us a bit more about that, the complete collapse of any sort of leadership between Newsom and Karen Bass, the LA mayor, and how you are looking to rectify that.
Yes. I mean, it's a very similar point, actually, in relation to the lawlessness and chaos we see in California, which is that if there are no consequences for bad behavior, you're going to get more bad behavior. And that is true around the world with bad regimes, and it is true here at home with criminals who attempted to break the law. And that's what we've seen for decades now in California, just on this particular issue of crime and chaos and lawlessness. And that is one of many. There's a reason that the subtitle of my book was Reversing the Ruin of America's worst run state. That's the subtitle of Califalia. And that is because it is the worst run state, because California is failing on every single measure that matters. And right now, with the riots in LA, of course, our focus is on crime and chaos and law and order. And it all goes together with a mindset that for years now has been pro-criminal. And in fact, right today, as we're speaking right now, I'm announcing a new policy on crime, which is what I will do as governor to reverse the absolutely insane pro-criminal policies we've seen from Gavin Newsom. Here's what's been going on in California over the last decade plus. He has systematically been shutting down state prisons. What does that mean? Dangerous, violent criminals have either been released early from prison and let out onto the streets, or they've been transferred to county jails, which are now totally overcrowded and overwhelmed. And they, in turn, release lower level criminals onto the streets because there's no room to keep them in jail. So yesterday, for example, when I launched my policy, which is the exact opposite, more prison capacity, so we have less crime, I was with a DA, in fact, the architect of a proposition that just passed with overwhelming support in California to try and reverse this pro-crime ideology. He was telling me that often in terms of criminals at the local level, you could be sentenced to 120 days in jail and you serve exactly 0. Catch and release. You go in the front door, out the back door. Why? Because the jails are full. And that's why a starting point for what I will do as governor to restore law and order, uphold decent standards of civilized behavior, is to reverse this insane closure of state prisons, more prisons, less crime. That's what I'm announcing today.
He's on a mission to reclaim California's future and restore sanity to the state and make it golden once again. Steve, talk about the Golden State. Look, when I'm growing up, I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. I was on the cold and sometimes dreary East Coast, and I looked west, and California to me was a paradise, amazing. Where did it all go wrong? When did it start, the slide for California?
So you're totally right. And the way I sometimes put it is that in many ways, the American dream, when we think of the American dream, we think of the California dream, the chance to live the life you want to live, a great job where you make enough to raise your family in a home of your own, in a safe neighborhood with a good school so your kids have a better life. That was California, exactly as you say. And step by step, it's been ruined. And the reason for that is entirely political. There's been no natural disaster that caused this. It's entirely man-made, or as I say, often Democrat-made. And that's the key to this. For too long now, we've had one-party rule by the Democrats in California. So it's at least 30 years now, nearly, since you had a Republican majority in either of the chambers of the state legislature. Total one-party rule for the last 15 years. What do you get with one-party rule? You get arrogance, complacency, elitism. You get the people in charge not paying attention to the regular families and businesses of California, but to their own interest groups, the people that pay them, the people that give them their instructions. I call it the Democrat industrial complex. All of that is the reason that we now have in California the worst outcomes on pretty much everything that matters. I'll just quickly go through the list. It's an amazing list. We have the highest taxes in the country, but also the highest rate of poverty. For most of last year, the highest rate of unemployment in America. We have the highest cost for everything that matters: gas, electricity, water, housing costs, the highest in America, the lowest home ownership. We have the worst business climate in America for 10 years in a row, on everything. Well, on fourth grade school results, the worst in America. It is an unbelievable catalog of total failure. That's what you get when people just stop paying attention to the needs of the community and only look to their own ideology. And that's the combination, I think. You saw it with the fires in Los Angeles in January, you saw it with the riots just now. This combination of extremism, ideological extremism, and governing incompetence. I actually call it DEI as the version of DEI that has caused the problem in California: Democrat extremism and incompetence. And the answer The way we turn it around is to elect a governor on a platform of common sense reform. That's what I'm talking about. Just very simple things. Reduce the ridiculous red tape and regulation that makes it impossible to run anything, to do anything in California. Lower taxes so that people can actually keep more of what they earn. Gas prices, we have the highest in the country. That's particularly affecting working class Californians. If we don't change direction, there's an estimate that we'll have $8.40 gas next year. I've got a plan to get rid of the climate regulations so that we can get to $3 gas in California, which in the rest of the country would just seem normal. Here it seems like nirvana because everything's so expensive. But what I'm saying is we can make California golden again. This idea that we just have to put up with it and that your only choice is to suffer or to leave is ridiculous. It doesn't have to be like this. That's why I'm running for governor, to turn things around and make California truly golden again.
Steve, well said all around. And California is more than worth saving. As you said, hey, for anyone in the other 49 states who's watching right now who says, well, tough break for California, but how does that affect me? It seems to me, Steve, that California has been sort of a test lab for the radical left and what they want to accomplish nationwide. Can you talk more about that?
100. It's a really important point. And that's why I agree with you that we can't just let California continue to slide into extremism and chaos and stagnation and decline like this. I mean, the way I sometimes describe it, and you talk about, use the word experiment, that's exactly how I see it. Because they've been unchallenged, this one-party rule for so long, they've used California as a kind of, I sometimes describe it as the Wuhan lab of far-left extremism. They've been cooking up these ideological viruses. They don't stay in California. So many of the bad things that are causing problems across the country, the climate extremism, the Green New Deal, the banning gas cars and gas stoves and making everything more expensive, endlessly obsessing about wind and sun, unreliable sources of energy, the gender extremism that we're seeing. All of these things started in California, $20 minimum wage, one thing after another. It starts here in California and it doesn't stop here. So my argument, not just to Californians, but everyone watching across the country is let's beat it here. Let's turn things around here. Let's save California for sanity. And that will help not just all of us here in California, but the whole country.
Yeah, amen. Steve, about a minute left. Look, you're a UK native. You worked for former UK Prime Minister David Cameron. You are now a Californian, an American citizen. What drew you to California?
No, I've loved California for as long as I can remember. That ideal of California. To me, California represents the best of America. Everything that I admire and love about our country, California should be the ultimate expression of that. Energy and optimism and ambition and innovation and startup hustle and creativity, the imagination, all of that. The California dream is the American dream. That's why it matters so much that we restore it. And I was in love with California even before we moved here. And I'm so honored to be given the opportunity to save this beautiful state for ourselves here, but also for our whole country.
Steve, great stuff. Good luck, my friend. Folks, the book is called Cali-Failure. It is a cautionary tale, a great read, but Steve is looking to turn things around. He's in the car right now. Steve, get back on the campaign trail. Be safe, my friend. We'll see you again soon. God bless Steve Hilton.
Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.